Hello and welcome to another video. So today I'm going to be covering a topic that I've had a fair few people ask me about on Instagram in the past sort of 3 to 4 months. Since February I've been incorporating a lot more Vivo barefoot footwear into my day-to-day life, my training and my general movement patterns. So I'm going to run you through the reasons why, what shoes I use on a day-to-day basis, what the benefits are, how it might benefit you, how I incorporate it into training, and any tips and tricks that I might have picked up along the way. So, before we get started, please make sure that if you like the video at any stage, you do drop it a like. And if you have any questions on anything I'm saying, please do drop them in the comments down below. Anything I've missed, etc., just stick them down below. I will get back to you, don't you worry about that. And if you are new to the channel, please make sure that you have subscribed as well. So, I will be running you through shoe by shoe what shoe it is, why it's made that way, how I use it, how you might be able to use it, and how you can get involved moving forward. So for anyone that might be interested, there is a discount code for Vivo Barefoot's website. If you do want to get yourself a pair and try them out for yourselves, I would encourage you to do so, but hopefully you can form your own opinion at the end of this video. Without any further ado, let's get into it. First things first, I think it's important to cover a few points on why these shoes exist in the first place and what the benefits are in a sort of conceptual way. So ultimately, footwear has existed for a very, very small portion of human existence, and for a very long time we've managed without footwear other than maybe a bit of puncture proofing to stop us getting sort of sharp stones, holes in our feet, bleeding, all that stuff. Since the creation of footwear, there's been a massive surge in running related injuries, movement related injuries, etc. Posture, back, hip, knees, pains, all the things that you hear about on a day-to-day basis. There's a lot of evidence that suggests that these can be caused by the changes in our gait from adapting so quickly as a species to unnatural movement through cushioned footwear. So when we're walking, we can often place a lot of weight through our heels and send up a lot of force up through our body. But because the cushioning takes a lot of that force, we don't feel the impact that that's actually having. What these do is they force you to feel the ground beneath your feet, really be conscious of how you're moving and better understand how you're putting one foot in front of the other, whether it's walking or running. It just brings us back to a bit more of a natural movement pattern, because I say again, footwear as we know it has only been around for such a finite period of time. With the toe box as well, most shoes are sort of unnecessarily narrow, which forces our toes into a sort of constricted coffin-like shape, which means that when children put on shoes from an early age, their feet can actually become deformed over time if they're in shoes that don't fit their feet. We all have so much variability in the way that our feet are shaped that there are so many merits to being able to incorporate some barefoot footwear. So, in the Western world, we've become very accustomed to wearing conventional footwear, which means that we are often neglecting the muscles, the joints, the ligaments around our feet and our ankles. What's this doing? It's causing a weak link in the kinetic chain from our base upwards. And as someone that's very focused on training, staying injury-free and general efficient movement, I'm really keen to build myself from the base upwards. And if I asked you, when was the last time you trained your feet? You'd probably say, never. Because that was my answer until pretty recently. But I thought, having ran just shy of 100 miles in November, the big limiting factor for me in my recovery was my feet. I couldn't walk. I had to pivot my movement from hip to knee, and it wasn't natural walking because my feet were so battered. So I thought, there's a missing link in my body here. How can I improve that? And just by walking around in barefoot shoes day to day, accumulating steps and slowly building volume, my feet feel so much stronger, my stability feels so much more reliable, my ankle mobility feels great, I've got so much more feel of the ground, so much more feel of the way in which I'm moving, and being able to feel connected to the ground is a really good feeling. I've got quite wide feet anyway, which means that the open toe box was something that I welcomed. If you've got narrow feet, that might be down to the fact that you've been wearing narrow shoes for so long, but it might just be the way that your feet are formed. Either way, we can all benefit from incorporating barefoot footwear into some sort of regimen. How extreme you want to go with it, whether you want to run ultras in barefoot shoes or whether you want to just incorporate them into dog walks to strengthen your feet and improve your overall health and well-being, then it's completely up to you. But that's a bit of a top-line summary of why this is something that I think we should all be considering. So let's get into the actual footwear itself. I'm going to work through this on how much use I've got out of each shoe. So basically sort of the ones I've accumulated the most miles in down to the ones I've accumulated the least miles in. So to start with, we have the Magna Trails, which are a firm ground trail shoe with a sort of neoprene sock effect up here, designed for running on trails, but I use them as my sort of everyday shoe. As you can see here, it's got a wider toe box, it's got the firm ground sole which gives you some grip, and it's really, really good entry-level shoe for anyone that's looking to get involved in barefoot footwear, because the little bit more grip that you get on the bottom makes it a little bit more supportive than a completely flat sole. So zero drop, there is no drop from heel to toe, it's completely flat, and you'll quickly feel when you do walk like this or walk in bare feet. I mean, that's ultimately all these are doing, is providing a seal between your foot and the floor to stop you from getting spiked by glass walking around, depends where you're from. But these are basically there to protect your feet from the floor, but to allow your feet and your hips and your knees and your movement to operate naturally. So these are my sort of favourite go-to pair. I've clocked up a lot of miles on these, probably just over 100 walking. No real sign of wear and tear, a little bit at the front there, but that's just to be expected. The grip's holding out really well on the bottom of these, and yeah, really happy with them so far, and probably the most comfortable pair that I use day to day. Number 2, we have the GeoCourse, which is Vivos' newer addition into the sort of more lifestyle focused market. So these look like Stan Smiths, and I have a pair of white ones and I have a pair of black ones, which I use day to day for most of my working days, as well as if I'm wearing jeans, going out for dinner, etc. This is my sort of casual choice of shoe. Again, open toe box as you can see, which does make them look a little bit wider than your standard sneaker, but the feeling of being able to feel the ground beneath you is fantastic. So the black ones are a new model, but these are the ones that I've been wearing for a long time. I've actually just got a new pair because I left my other pair down in London. So, you know, gotta have the style on tap. These, again, as with all the shoes, zero drop but completely flat sole, which means that there's a little bit more effort that you need to put into your foot movement so that you're not jamming your heel into the floor, because you'll very quickly realise that if you're walking wrong, for want of a better term, your body will tell you, because you don't have the cushioning there disguising that and taking the impact for you. So what I'd advocate is, if anyone's interested in giving these a go, get a pair of these, wear them as a casual option, and just slowly feel your way as you walk around, because you'll quickly determine for yourself, just by the feedback that you're getting from the feeling in your feet, how well you're moving and if there's any ways in which you can improve. So these are the lifestyle options. Great pair of shoes, really comfortable, and having that open toe box was a life-changing feeling for me. Number 3, I have just blasted out 15 kilometers in the Scottish mountains in these this morning, and I'm very happy to say that that is the first full training session uncompromised that I've done in Vivos. 4 months down the line, been slowly building up my volume to allow my ankles, my feet, etc. to adjust, because something that I'll touch on towards the end of this video is that we need to slowly ease into this, given that for so long we'll have been used to that slight heel in most shoes, and we're allowing cushioning to take a lot of the impact for us, which means that a lot of runners, a lot of walking, people allow heel striking to become really dominant, which means that we can disguise poor running technique and poor walking technique by the shoes that we're wearing. What these do is it forces you to sort of drill down on that feeling so that you can feel your way through the movement. And that's something that's really improved my running stride recently, is incorporating these into my running strides at the end of a session, into some of my shorter recovery runs, really slowly and cautiously building up the volume so that I can feel my cadence, feel my foot position, know that my centre of gravity is directly where it needs to be, and that I'm not sending my heel out further than it should be and putting any impact through my knees, hips or lower back that shouldn't be there. Ultimately, what this is doing is reinforcing me as an athlete, making me less susceptible to injury, and making me more sustainable long term to being able to continue to put out the outputs that I want to put out. It's not necessarily going to make me faster, it's not going to make me stronger, it's going to make my feet stronger, but what it's going to do is it's going to allow me to operate more naturally in terms of movement, which means that I can perform at a higher output for longer with less risk of injury. I'll talk a little bit more on the sort of transition to Vivo barefoot or just general barefoot footwear later on, but that's just a bit of an overview there. Worked really, really, really well on the mountains as I determined today, so pleased with the result there. Next up is Vivos' most popular and oldest model. It is the Primus Lite. So these are the shoes that I wear for any gym training or any dog walks, etc. Completely flat sole, which means that again you need to be a bit more conscious of your movement, because you might get a bit of heel pain if you're striking your heel, because you don't have that additional support of the firm ground sole to get you through it. These are remarkably comfortable. It genuinely doesn't feel like you've got much on your feet at all, but that allows you to understand how you're moving, feel the ground, etc, etc. All that stuff that I've talked about up until now. These are, yeah, one of the most popular models for a reason, because they're a great entry point. They are on the cheaper side of things as well, and they slip on and off really, really easily. A lot of people use these in the gym. Powerlifters use these for deadlifting, squatting, etc. because it's a completely flat sole, which is a benefit that I haven't really discussed yet. So these are fantastic for deadlifting, for squatting if you're in flats, because there's absolutely no interference from the footwear that you're in, and you've got a nice open toe box, which means that you can really, really screw yourself into the floor when you're squatting or deadlifting to reinforce good movement patterns. Built up a fair amount of volume in these, done a bit of road running in these, but again, I'm very, very early doors on being able to build up miles on the roads, so I will keep that as a work in progress. Next up, another one of Vivos' most popular models is the Tracker, which is basically a lightweight waterproof hiking boot. And I've actually not worn these in the hills just yet because I really like to have as little on my feet as possible when I'm in the hills. And I've always worn trail shoes as I'm fell running rather than hiking, walking, however you want to talk about it. So again, firm ground sole, waterproof Gore-Tex sort of leather outer, really, really comfortable, really, really stable, and really good way of feeling how much actual ankle stability you have in your ankles without having to rely on the shoe doing it for you. So I just wear these with jeans for dog walks on Sunday and actually think they look really good that way. You might disagree, but you know what? Each to their own. I've had a good time up until now. These sell really, really well. People generally love them, and it's a bit of a different feeling if you're used to conventional hiking boot, but it's one that I really encourage you to give a go. The people that I've spoken to that have got a pair of these and have built up some mileage in them have really, really enjoyed the feeling. And there's the added benefit that they're waterproof, etc, etc, as well as being much warmer with the thermal insoles. Don't know if you can see that there. Thermal insoles as well, which means that they're very, very suitable for sort of colder temperatures. So that is the Tracker. A few other colours of that, and hopefully a black one coming quite soon. But again, another favourite of mine, and actually completely night and day in comparison to the hiking boots that I've worn in the past. I love the open toe box feeling, and I love the feeling of being able to have ankle stability without relying on the shoe. It's great. Next up, we have the soft ground Primus Trail, which is basically the soft ground version of the shoes that I ran around the mountains in today. So these are the same, but with more aggressive lugs on them, which means obviously if it's softer ground, you've got more grip, you've got more traction, you can attack descents a little bit more aggressively. Again, standard trail shoe sort of lacing option. These are a brand new pair, as my other pair are stuck down in London, but I've used these as part of my early transition stages to get used to running on grass with a bit more grip, so I can feel that pull back effect to improve my running stride. So again, really good option. You can sort of use these as swim run shoes as well, but that leads quite nicely into the next pair of shoes. So these are the most audacious shoe that I own, probably out of all brands ever. The Tempest. Great play, Shakespeare, studied it at school, class. These have the most aggressive soles out of any shoes that I've seen. These are actually made in collaboration with Michelin, the tyre company. They might do more than tyres, but that's what I know them for. Michelin stars. I think, is that the same company? I don't know. Someone can let me know. I'll look it up afterwards. These have basically been made to become the most effective swim run shoe on the planet. And as Vivos sponsors the however you say it, anyone can correct me there, Swim Run World Series, these have been made in partnership with some really, really top level athletes on that. So we've basically got a very lightweight neoprene sock-like effect with really aggressive lugs for the sort of transitions between water, beaches, rocks, etc, etc. These are very, very comfortable. You can feel how aggressive the grip is on the soles, just walking around in the day to day. I've been wearing them without socks, which can obviously get a bit clammy, but if you're in and out of water, it kind of mitigates that. But I'm going to give these a go as a general trail shoe in the next couple of weeks because I'm really confident they'll feel great on the trails. Not got many miles in these thus far, so I can't give a bit more of a review, as it were. But so far, so good. And you've got a bit of a flotation effect at the back there for swimming. Because if you've ever done a swim run, you'll know how much drag you do get from your shoes. So there is an overview of all the shoes that I've been implementing and using over the past 3 to 4 months. But more importantly, and the biggest question on your minds will be, how have you been using them and how have you been actually managing that transition process? So I've been working closely with my coach to basically improve my dorsiflexion, the strength and stability around my ankles and the strength in my calves. Because going back to my earlier point, if you've got a standard pair of running shoes, you've got, actually I'll grab a pair. Standard pair of running shoes, you tend to have a sort of 8 to 10 millimeter drop from heel to toe, which basically means that you're constantly running at a bit of a tilt, which changes your natural gait. And we've evolved to be able to function without having cushioning under our feet. So that means that running technique means that we should have our hips, feet and shoulders in line when we're making contact with the ground, because that sends the force straight upwards. However, what these shoes can do is it allows you to slam your heel into the ground, which sends a really, really aggressive transient impact force up your leg, which is partly responsible for a lot of lower limb injuries that occur in recreational runners. However, standard strength and conditioning programs can alleviate a lot of those injuries as well, but why would we not build our base from the ground upwards, because it's ultimately the foundation of all our movements. So Vivo takes that away by giving you a zero drop. I must add, when I'm running on roads at the moment, I'm using the Ultra Escalantes. Ultra are a brand that have an open toe box as well as zero drop, but they do have cushioning. So I've been using that as a way to manage my volume on the roads a little bit more whilst getting that open toe box feeling and having less of a drop to allow my ankles and calves to adjust a little bit. To put this into context, if we go from here to here, which is basically what this shoe is doing in comparison to a Vivo, we have that much more range of motion to deal with in our calves and our ankles. And if we've been doing that for a long time, as most of us will have been if we've been wearing conventional footwear, and if we built up a lot of volume as a runner walking around, then we will not be used to the stress and the volume in that portion of the movement. So if we went from our standard running volume, our standard walking volume, into a pair of barefoot shoes, we'd very quickly realise that there's a missing link there that is far, far behind the strength of the rest of our body. So what we need to do is slowly build up the volume, slowly build up the intensity, so that we can really acclimatise to the new movement pattern, which is ultimately sort of an old movement pattern if we go on evolutionary terms. So what I've been doing is a lot of skipping, well, not a lot of skipping, I've been incorporating skipping and single leg skipping to basically improve my ground impact force. I've been incorporating single leg box jumps to improve my sort of dorsiflexion and ping off the floor. I've been building up over 10,000 steps every day in barefoot footwear, and I now would think of nothing I'd rather do less than walk around in a pair of running trainers. It feels awful to me. I love the freedom of the feet and being able to feel the ground beneath it. So there's lots of things that you can do. There's sort of toga, which is developing the strength in your toes and the balls of your feet and the arches of your feet, etc. So my feet now feel so much stronger than they did. My ankles now feel so much stronger than they did. My calves have finally grown. About time. Pretty 11 years of training down, and it took barefoot footwear to get me there. But anyway, I feel much more stable on the ground. I feel like I'm much less likely to roll my ankle if I ever have a lapse of focus when I'm on the trails. And I've developed that portion of the range of motion to allow me to slowly start to build volume now. So it's really encouraging that I got through 3 hours in the hills without any pain in my Achilles or my calves. There was a bit of strain, but that's ultimately just because it's putting a bit more impact through it than it's used to. I'm going to keep slowly building up the miles in the ultras to the point where I can maybe taper that down into being able to do road miles in the Vivos. But ultimately, what they've done as well is really helped me drill my running technique, get my cadence nailed, get my centre of gravity nailed, and really allow me to feel my foot strike so that I am running with the most efficient technique for me and my body shape, my body type, and the way in which I move, as well as not allowing shoes to disguise the mistakes that I'm making, and you can very easily get away with for a long time, but ultimately that might lead to injury. So I have stronger feet, I have stronger calves, I have more stable ankles. I love the feeling of having an open toe box, which has allowed my toes to become much more strong and stable for my squats and my general weightlifting as well, because it allows me to really screw myself into the floor. I feel much more sort of in line in my hips and my knees when I'm moving day to day, and the light-footedness that I felt in the hills today was a really nice feeling because I felt really connected to the floor. And as you'll know, I'm someone that's a huge fan of being in the outdoor world, to the point that feeling that much more connected to the ground was really, really important to me. That's a bit of an overview. I've kind of been quite superficial in terms of the sort of sciencey side of things. If you do have any questions on anything, any sort of contentions that you want to raise or any more detail that you're after, again, please do drop it in the comments below. Barefoot shoes are not a solution for everyone, but they can be a fantastic tool that you can implement to be able to improve your foundation and build your base from the ground up. They can be a complete lifesaver for people that have been suffering from injury for many years, but they can also be a great way to drill your running technique. It's kind of like an example that my coach used the other day is if you were learning to play the piano in mountaineering gloves, it'd be really difficult to get the feeling down, and you'd feel quite restricted. So what would you do? You'd strip off the mountaineering gloves and you'd learn to play the piano so you've got the dexterity in your fingers, the feeling, and the sort of second nature in the back of your mind so that you really understood how you were moving your hands and what that was equating to. Then, if you wanted to go and play the piano on Mount Everest and it was really cold, you could put the mountaineering gloves back on, but you'd have much more of a natural movement and a more dexterous feeling to the way you were playing the piano if you'd done the time without the gloves on. Made more sense in my head than it sounded, but you know what? I'm going to run with it. You let me know if that made sense. If not, apologies. Come up with your own analogy and let me know in the comments below. So that is all you're going to get from me on this today. I'm still sort of transitioning, as it were, and I will continue to develop my foundations forevermore, as we all should be. I've got enough shoes to sink a ship, so I'm pretty much covered. If you guys want to get yourself a pair, you can get 10% off in the description below. Other than that, thanks for watching. Do drop it a like. Make sure you subscribe if you're new to the channel, and see you next time.